Okay guys, this is part two of the Faceclean project. Part one was using the healing brush, patch, and clone to fix the blemishes on Beyonce's face. The next one is where you're going to basically graft or transplant Nicole Kidman's skin onto Beyonce along with her eye. So let's get started with that. The first thing you should do is show the Nicole Kidman layer. That should be kept in your PSD. The next thing, we're actually going to select this layer. We're going to take the opacity down to about 50%. That will allow us to see through that layer. And then we can get our move tool and we can move her eye about. I'm looking at these eyes here. I'm trying to match up the eyes the best we can. They're a little bit of a different size. And we're just going to, again, we're going to get it close. You can do the mouth if you want, but it's always the eyes that generally should be straight across from each other. So that looks pretty good. I might bump it over just a little bit. And again, I'm using the arrow key left on my keyboard and right to bump by 1 pixel. So that now that that's in place, we're going to go ahead and add a mask to Nicole's layer. So once again, to add a mask, all we have to do is make sure we're on the correct layer, and we go down to this icon at the bottom of our layers window and click it, and it'll add a mask. Now remember, white means opaque, black means transparent. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of everything that is not Nicole's skin right around in this area of Beyonce. So to do that, we're going to use black, and we're going to get our brush, and I'm going to make the brush nice and big, at least to start with, and I'm going to make the hardness as soft as possible. In fact, I'm going to bump that brush size up a little bit. Then I just click into the void to get rid of that window. And when I say void, I mean like this area up here. Okay, so now what we do is we start brushing. And it does get a little confusing in here where the two sort of cheeks are a little bit off of each other. So you want to make sure you know which one is which. So this one that comes outside is Nicole's, and this one that's inside right here is Beyonce. So we want to just use this brush and sort of brush around the outside of Beyonce's chin and up through her ear, and just get that hair out of there, and then go around and just keep a little bit of that skin that's up on top of the forehead. Now I'm going to click here where the right side of my brush meets that guide. I'm going to click, and I'm going to hold down Shift and draw a line straight down. Now by holding down Shift, it'll allow you to draw or paint in a straight line. Okay, so if you want to see what we have so far, we can bring the opacity all the way back up, and you'll see that I have a mask all the way around the part of the skin that basically we want to keep. And now that we have that line around there, we can actually make our brush a little bit bigger, and we can actually hide Beyonce. Might make it even easier to see what we have. And I'm going to make the brush a little bigger, and then I'm going to take care of the rest of the stuff out here that we definitely don't want. Okay, and I'm being very careful not to go back over close to what we want to keep. I'm trying to get rid of most of this. Now that we've done that, I can even make the brush a little bit bigger and really speed up the workflow by getting all these pixels out here. And now if you want to see if you left any pixels in there, you can hide and show her face, and you might see some things popping up that you're going to want to go in and mask. And now we're going to bring Beyonce back. And now that she's back, we want to make the brush nice and small. It's not reacting, so let me make sure I'm active. And we want all of Beyonce's mouth, otherwise the mouth area is going to look really weird. So I'm going to just carefully mask in here to get her mouth back. And there we go. So now we have Kidman with this mask on it right over the top of Beyonce. And I can see where I missed a spot over to the left of Beyonce's mouth. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to brush that area out. It was real subtle, but I could tell it was there. And that's it on masking for now. But now what we have to do is we have to blend the skin in a little bit with Beyonce's face. So what we're going to do here is something new. We're going to add an adjustment layer. So an adjustment layer will adjust certain things in a selected layer. And the adjustment layers are down here on this sort of half and half icon here. And you can see there's all kinds of things. The first one I want you to learn is levels. Levels allow you to control the lights and darks in a pixel layer. We also want to make sure that we clip that layer to the layer below and it's not affecting all of the layers below. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I start playing with these squares here, you'll see that the entire image is turning super dark because I'm manipulating the dark portion of the levels window. Okay, to clip that just to the layer below, we right click on the adjustment layers thumbnail and go hit clipping mask, and you'll see a little arrow which is pointing now to just the layer below. And from here we can start playing with the levels. And you'll find that if you just play with the mid-tone, which is this gray middle one, a little bit, you'll see that just adjusting that will get you pretty dang close to what we want. Don't go too crazy. Try to make it look like the skin is very similar in tone. Okay, that looks good to me, but I'm going to do one more adjustment layer so I can add multiple adjustment layers to that same layer. And I'm going to click on this. And I'm going to play with color balance. Okay, so color balance, again, we need to clip that, right click, get clipping mask, and so it only affects the Nicole layer. I think it's a little too red, so I'm going to take some red out. We're not going to go crazy, otherwise it's going to start turning like greenish blue. We're just going to take a little bit of that red out. And I sort of like that right there. It's not perfect. I told you in the beginning this is going to look a little bit weird. But if you submit something that looks like that, I'd be very, very happy. And now we're going to perform basically the last step of this project besides what we do when we want to save, and that is we have to add a background behind this person. It is now two people, so I'm just going to call it this person. To do that, we have to first flatten our layers. So again, if you come over here to any of the layers, right click and go to flatten image, you'll see that all the adjustment layers and the 2 pixel layers merge together to create one layer. Now we have something that we can have a chance at cutting out, or excuse me, masking. Now I've done this before already just as a trial run, and I can tell you that Photopea doesn't do as good a job as Photoshop during this step. But this is basically the same process you used for the Alicia Keys assignment, in which we're going to come over here and we're going to use our quick selection tool, and I'm just going to click on her face, and you'll see that I still have some of the background. You'll see that the selection actually leaked onto her face and it missed her earrings. Okay, so that's going to be a problem that we need to solve down the road. But before we get down the road, you need to understand that, again, we can use multiple selection tools to try to select what we want to select. And now I see this area of shadow that we want to include in this selection before we go to refine edge. And for that, I'm going to use my magic wand tool, and I'm going to take the tolerance down to about 15. And hopefully, if I come in and I use the wand tool, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see a little bit better, and I click on this shadow area and then click inside of here, although that went away, so I had to hit Control Z to undo it. Sometimes Photopea has a little bug and it doesn't pick up what we want to pick up. So I have to hold down Shift, remember, to add to my selection. So I'm holding down Shift, which changes these icons here to the Add button, and I click outside. Hang on a second. I apologize. We have the face selected and we want to deselect this area here. So what I have to do is hold down Alt, which gives us this icon here, and then I should be able to click in here, and sometimes you have to click more than once to get those areas. If we want to get cute with this, we can actually get our lasso tool, and I can hold down Shift and add her earring very quickly over here. And also I want to get this side of her face, which is not perfect. It's very hard to draw even with a mouse. We want to add that to it. And I also want to add her shirt. So I'm going to hold down Shift and add that little shirt section. Again, I'm clicking around to make sure I get all of those pixels inside. And then even if I wanted to get my lasso tool and hold down shift, I can draw a circle around that, and I can get these little dots down here. We can get it pretty close. I do not expect perfection out of this. So what we're going to do now that we have a decent selection is we're going to go to the Refine Edge. And that button will come up if you have either of these selection tools. But we're going to go to Refine Edge. And then again, we want to paint around the outside. Now I'm telling you, this result is not going to be great. But we would really want to focus on the hair down here and getting these strands of hair back into the selection. Okay, and you can see when I do that, they pop in nicely. Part of her face over here is a little transparent. It's hard to see the background. If I go to white, let's try black. Yeah, it looks pretty good. We've got some issues over here, but understand, because we're going to output to a raster mask, which we're going to do now. Click OK. Again, we're going to get a mask back. And now that we have a mask, we can go in and carefully paint with our brush. We want it to be white instead of black. And I'm going to make this a little smaller. I'm going to make the brush a little harder. And I can go in and start painting some of her face back and being very careful not to go over that line. Otherwise, we'll get other things that we don't want. So again, this is not going to be perfect. If I really want to get that earring back in, I can start clicking around and painting that area back in. And then I'm looking once again for other issues like down here. I think we need to get her neck back in. The edge really got overlapped when we used that refine tool. So again, I'm just painting very carefully to get some of this stuff back. Over here it looks pretty good. Again, we got a little problem here on the side of her face. So I'm going to paint very carefully. Again, not perfectly, but pretty carefully. And we're missing some of the ear over here. And that looks pretty good for now. So now that we have this mask, we can add a background to it. And we talked today, or to you guys, this will be yesterday, about how to get images from the internet. So I'm going to run through that again. I want to get a high-res image. So I'm going to go to Images. I did a beach sunset search. Images, Tools, Size, Large. And these will give us a bunch of high-res background images. And it doesn't matter which one you choose. It really doesn't. I'm going to select, oh, why not? We'll try this one. It's really big. Let's see if this copies in. It's probably going to copy in, and it's going to be really big. But I right-clicked, went to Copy Image. Now I'm going back to Photopea. And if I just hit Control-V, you will see that it pasted into my mask layer, which we don't want. So what I'm actually going to do to make sure it pastes in okay is I'm going to create a new empty layer by clicking this icon and now hit Control-V. Oh, it ends up, it's very small. So let's fix that. We obviously don't want that because we would have to scale this up now. Okay, so I'm going to Control-Z to undo that paste, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to find a better image. By the way, do not ever use these down here because these change it from the high res to a different resolution. Let's try this one. See if it's big enough. Copy image, go over here, paste. It's huge. All right. So now what do we do? Well, we can move it around if we want the sun directly behind her, and we can leave it at that. And then we have to move our layer below the Beyonce Kidman layer. If you want to scale, if you have to scale your image up or down, remember, go to Edit, Free Transform, click on one of the corners of the bounding box, and hold down Shift as you click and drag. So I can actually click inside and move that as well. And I sort of like that. That's good enough for this project. And the final thing is, for this project, I want a PSD file with layers. Okay, so in the part 2 directions, which you'll see right here, it says PSD with layers, and don't forget your Google Doc. All right, you should have been writing down all of the things you're doing in your Google Doc. That's one reason why I give you 3 days for this assignment. All right, so File, Save as PSD, and then figure out where you're going to save it. I'm not going to save it right now. I don't want to take that time, but save it and upload it to Google Classroom and turn it in. And that's it for the Faceclean project.